Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Bizzy. I hope you enjoyed today's story. And if you do, please subscribe. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Bizzy. I'm so glad you guys are here. And my guest today is Elizabeth Kipp. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Bizzy. How you doing? It's great to be here.
It's
Thank you
so
for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Now, you guys, before I go any further, Elizabeth Kipp is a stress management historical trauma specialist who uses trauma trained and yoga informed addiction recovery coaching, ancestral clearing, compassion injury, and yoga to help people with their healing. Elizabeth healed from over 40 years of chronic pain, including anxiety, panic attacks, and addiction. Now in long term recovery, she guides others to unleash their healing power, find freedom from chronic suffering, and live a thriving life. She's an international best-selling author of The Way Through Chronic Pain: Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power. Oh my gosh. So I met Elizabeth. I'm just getting you. So Elizabeth and it's God, I want to say, that put us together because we ended up talking about something totally different besides what Elizabeth does. And we got on a Zoom call and I just felt a connection in that what she was talking about, like she was talking about dealing with your mom and your ancestral healing and how we carry things through our past. And I was so intrigued. I was like, do you want to come on my show? And she's like, sure, I'd love to. So, with further ado, Elizabeth, I'm so happy to have you here. Will you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to recovery?
Sure. Thank you so much. I really started, you could say, as a sugar addict. I wasn't breastfed. They gave me formula. So there's sugar in formula, right? So I really started that way. But and I actually remember there was alcohol all around me. My mother was an undiagnosed, untreated bipolar disorder sufferer who used alcohol to manage her symptoms, which of course that didn't do anything but make it worse. But nobody knew that at the time. Like there were just no tools. Anyway, I literally started drinking socially when I was 14 or 15 and quit when I was 17. So I literally quit. Yeah, I could tell that um, alcohol was having an effect on me because I remember waking at 17. I remember waking up and at 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting with a bottle of beer in my lap looking at my favorite tree, and I didn't feel anything for my favorite tree. And I knew I was in trouble. And I heard this voice that said, you're going to end up just like your mom if because she was a raging, she's rages all the, you're going to end up just like your mom if you keep this up. And I was like, not going there. So quit alcohol, but I had an injury in my back that was a chronic pain issue. And by the time I was 28, it needed surgery. And that was when the opiates started, the opiates and the anti-anxiety medicine. And I had 4 surgeries, and every time I had a surgery, we finally got it, the slip in my spine, this instability, we finally got it stabilized, but the pain was just escalated the whole time. And the doctors just kind of said to me, well, you have chronic pain. Here are your opiates and your benzodiazepines. This is the best quality of life we have for you. And I was devastated because the thing was you can't heal from chronic pain. And I was devastated. Now I cried for 2 weeks. I had a 4-year-old and a fairly new marriage, and I had a career that had gotten torpedoed, and I went through this journey. As I said, I cried for 2 weeks, and I kept in all those tears, I kept looking and looking, and I'm like, there's an answer. I just can't find it. And it was so dark, and I knew there was a light, but I just couldn't find it. And but I kept looking, right? And I went through all of Elizabeth. What is Elizabeth? Forgotten her last name. The woman that does the work on grief, the stages of grief. I went through all the stages of grief except the last one, which was acceptance. I never accepted that prognosis. I had an epiphany instead. And the epiphany was, they're not fortune tellers. And they've forgotten their basic science. Science is about probabilities, it's not about facts. And they're telling me a lot about the model they're working in, then they're telling me about the body's ability to heal. And I knew that we live in the all that is. Science can only comment on the part that it can observe, measure, and describe. But we heal in the all that is as well, not just in the part that science looks at, which is where Western medicine lives, right? So I knew I was going to have to look out wider, and I always had a sense of a higher power, and that was what kept me going on this journey. And I was on those opiates and benzos for 31 years until I finally found, the last 15 of it was fentanyl, and I lived through that, which was astonishing. Yeah. And I finally found a doctor who had both Eastern and Western training, and he had this a deep understanding kind of Eastern philosophy, and kind of really understood the all that is, and understood healing. And he said to me, I don't need to look at your x-rays or your records. I want to know who you are. And I'd never heard a doctor say anything like that before. Anyway, he understood the nature of chronic pain. And I went into his pain management program at the Betty Ford Institute, or the Betty Ford Center. It's now under Hazleton. And I walked in there with 40 years of chronic pain, and I walked out 52 days later with no pain. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
for one, I'm going to go back up for two things. For one, sugar, like everybody, I mean, I wasn't nursed either. I mean, I was born in 1968. Moms did not do that back then. And even when my kids were born, it was so painful. Nobody told me how much pain it was going to be to nurse. And it was really painful with my oldest. And I stopped. And with my other two, I was like, not happening. I've already been through this. I remember kicking a chair and I was bleeding. I was breastfeeding. I was bleeding all over the place. And my younger sister said, oh my gosh, why are you doing this? I'm like, everybody says I have to nurse my kids. And she's like, if everybody told you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do it? And I said, no. And she said, stop doing that right now. And I did. But I never realized that there was sugar in formula. But that obviously makes sense, right?
Well, there's sugar in milk,
There's sugar in everything.
lactose. I mean, it's just, anyway. Yeah.
And then to think that you were on fentanyl, because I was actually just talking to somebody yesterday that where we spoke about fentanyl and it coming over the border, and we only think of young people doing fentanyl, and it's so not true.
Oh no, the fentanyl. Wow. I actually had so I'm in recovery about 11 and a half years from all of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And about 5 or 6 years into that, I had a compression fracture in my spine. And the doctor said, kyphoplasty will help with the pain, because it was quite painful. And I didn't want to take any, I wasn't going to go on opiates. So I get into the procedure, and what kyphoplasty is, they just take kind of a human super glue and they shoot it into the bone, and it solidifies, and it's like, human super glue. So anyway, he didn't tell me anything about the procedure. He was just, go do this thing. So I said, great. So I got scheduled, and they put me in pre-op, and the nurse comes in and says, oh, we're going to give you Versed and fentanyl. And I'm like, what? I said, wait a minute, you're going to you're going to put me in a procedure where I need Versed and fentanyl? Yeah. And I said, well, he said, but we don't have to give it to you. And I'm like, dude, if you're going to put me in a procedure where I need Versed and fentanyl, which I'm in recovery from, give it to me, but just don't give it to me. Don't give me any afterwards. Right. And that was like, that's where I'm drawing the line. And I went in there and I was so scared, Bizzy. I was like, I'm walking into the dragon's den. I'm going to feel its fire. Oh my God, relapse territory in all the stories. And I saw my mind just freak out. And I was like, no, we're not doing it like this. I'm getting my connection. I'm connecting to my higher power. That connection. I'm going to do my breathing. I'm going to stay present and I'm going to allow this process to be what it is. And by the grace of God, I actually stayed there for that half hour in that super cold. It was very, really cold to keep the bacteria down. It's super cold. It was almost shivering. You don't want to be shivering when you got a spinal needle going in your anyway. So they had to give me 3 separate doses of that little cocktail they had, and I never felt high. Thank goodness it didn't take me there. It just took care of the issue, which I needed to be able to lie still to take the procedure. And then when I was done, I didn't have any cravings.
So
No,
amazing.
I'm not saying that that's going to happen for everybody. I'm just saying it was for me. But I'm telling you right now, that moved my maid from freaking out to, this is not about this. This is about my connection in the present and my connection to God and what's happening and its healing energy. That's what this is about. I swear to God, that's what it neutralized all that stuff.
So tell me this: how have you hurt your back so many times? Were you an athlete? Like what?
Oh,
How were you getting in pain all the time?
yeah. So I was an equestrian as a kid, and I had an accident where I fell and I broke my fifth lumbar in two, and it split front to back. And the compression fracture happened later. I actually have had 2 of them because opiates create a situation where you have osteoporosis, and now I'm doing everything I can to keep my bones as strong as possible. But yeah, compression fracture was just kind of like, I have low bone density because of the opiates, and I'm a woman, right? So we have we have issues with that. So
Eh,
I'm on what is it? Uh, Estrogen replacement therapy, and I'm just careful to do everything I can to build my bones back up. So, yeah.
And tell me this: so what made you finally reach out to the Betty Ford Clinic, which is now Hazleton?
Right. So my son actually, I was an editor on his newsletter. He had was kind of like a little daily newsletter called the Daily Love back in the day, and I worked on that. And his community was half in recovery, and I remember at one point saying, you know what, I tried to get off my medication, and I kept moving down and down and down and down, and I couldn't get any further, and I was like, okay, I can't do this. And my own prescribing doctor was like, well, we'll put you in a coma and get you out that way. And I was like, well, that's interesting. How many patients have you done that with? None. And I'm like, I'm not going to be your guinea pig. So I was like, that's the, so the message there is, and I say this to people, before a doctor puts you on a medicine, ask what's the exit plan. Because if they're going to put you on a medicine, they better help and know how to get you off of it. So just like, that's a sidebar, but important lesson, right? Anyway, I couldn't get off my medicine by myself, and so I kind of put a call out to all my friends, including my son, and he knew someone, Lisa Hallerman, uh, in L.A., and Lisa knew Dr. Peter Prescott, who he wrote a book. There's this book. I had his book. He wrote a book called Conquer Chronic Pain, an innovative mind-body approach. He passed away in 2016, but he left us that beautiful book, which I highly suggest to anybody who's got a chronic pain issue. Peter was the director of the pain management program at the Betty Ford Center, and Elisa got a hold of him through Maston, and Peter called me on the phone, and he knew what medicines I was on, but I never said to him anything about panic attacks. He knew. And my own prescribing doctor didn't know anything about panic attacks or that benzodiazepines would cause panic attacks. He didn't even know that. But Dr. Prescott knew. And he said, I can reset he said, first of all, your pain meds may be causing your pain. And I was like, what? What? And then second thing he said was, I can help you reset your stress response. He didn't say panic. I knew what that meant. I knew, oh, he knows I'm having panic attacks. And I was like, when's the next bed open? I'm coming. Right? So he knew how to detox people off that particular cocktail that I was on. And it wasn't like I was so special in his program. He had a 90% success rate with people like us that were on this combination that had been on it for a long time and that had this chronic pain for a long time. And he knew how to help us. Right. So what a blessing. And that program was only there for 3 years. So what are the odds that I would have been there in that window in the 31 years? I mean, like, this doesn't get any more miraculous. I mean, we're all miracles. I'm not saying I'm so special, but I'm saying the circumstances around this situation are pretty astronomical, the odds.
Oh my gosh, well, I remember when I first was getting sober, in 2006 when I got sober, somebody gave me a book called God's Little Winks. And I don't believe anything's a coincidence. And I love the fact, how old were you? Because you had willingness to say, I don't want to keep doing this. I'm willing to reach out for help to a stranger. And so many people, I actually just talked about it on a podcast recently, how so many people look at asking for help as a weakness rather than a strength. And where did this come from, do you
Oh.
think, this willingness?
I love that you said that, because that one of the phenomena I work with, I've been with thousands of chronic pain people over the years because I've been around so many of them, and I work with people in it. One of the things that is an effect of chronic pain is this, just like any other addiction, really, it's an addiction as well as anything else. It's a sense of isolation. I have to do it on my own, because we can't share our chronic pain experience. We can't. It's something we have to live. So it's kind of baked into the cake for me. And this, you hear this in the recovery community a lot. For me, it was like, okay, I've done everything I know to do. I got nowhere else to go. And I'll tell you that I knew that those drugs were going to take me down. So I knew that my exit plan was Dr. Prescott, or I'm off the planet. Like, it was like it was obvious to me, and I really knew that my mission wasn't done. It was scary, and I remember when I was on my way to the Betty Ford Center, I said to myself, what's the weakness in this whole situation? What's the weak point? And I was like, oh, the door, because I can walk out anytime I want. So that was very powerful, and my just kind of knowing that and kind of having that, like, okay, I got that. I see what it is. I see you. Now the question is, what am I going to do about it? And the other part that I just don't know how to, like, explain it, because it's hard to put in words. But I knew that a part of me really knew that I was held, and as scary as all of it was, I knew ultimately whatever happened, it was going to be okay. As as gnarly as it got, it was still going to be okay, right? And that again, this miracles thing. Like I died 3 times on the operating table, so I've been through some stuff, and I've come back and I've had that near death experience. So I've had some profound. Um, Actually, it was like died twice on the operating table, died another time somewhere else. Just to be clear, so I've had some really profound experiences, and there's like I can't do this alone. I know I'm being held, but other people have information that I don't have. And but I did have to get pretty desperate for me to get to that point.
It's amazing. Now, were you raised like with any religion when you were growing up?
No, I had this strange I mean we were I kind of went to a school that had Episcopal services a couple times a week. Um, my my maternal grandfather was a Christian Scientist. His my maternal grandmother was a paternal grandmother was a Methodist. My maternal grandfather was an atheist, and my parents just really it was not a topic of conversation. But what I did know growing up was I knew there was a religion thing, but I also knew that there was this thing happening out there because I spent a lot of time in nature and with animals. Remember, I said I spent time with horses, but I spent time sitting in grass and watching bees and ants and the trees. And I just like that translated to me as some kind of very powerful, I don't know if you'll say magical to a kid, it would be magical energy. And so I knew there was something going on more than was being verbalized in my world, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And I think, well, back, I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, I was born in 68, and you know, you always had this time to be able to lay in the grass and watch the clouds go by. And your imaginations would be like, oh, look, that was a cow or that was a pig. And then you'd see the bees and you'd see the horses, like I rode too. Did you grow up in Kansas City?
No, I grew up in Delaware, northern
Oh,
Delaware. Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Near
Hmm.
Kennett Square.
Oh, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that's my
My hus-
old. Yeah.
my husband's from there.
Oh, there you go. No
Did
wonder
you
we
live in
met.
like Greenville?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Wilmington. Yeah, hmm,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah, beautiful area, beautiful area. That's where we're
Gorgeous.
from. Yeah, that's where we're from, that area.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Right.
Yeah.
The 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 energy there because we're in nature and it's there's it's very rich in that part of the world versus say when I went to New York City. My father's parents lived in New York City for a while. Um, that was a very different vibe, except when I went to Central Park. Right? So I really always had a sense of kind of the vibe of stuff, and certain things drew me to them and certain things didn't. But I kind of felt the thread through all of it, right? And I just felt like the chronic pain, the opiate experience, and the pain that the experience I had with chronic pain was it kind of put a veil over all of it, you know. I really woke up after I got free of those medications after about 2 weeks. I was like, oh, I'm awake. Right?
And when you woke up, is that when you started doing your work and healing, or were you a healer previous to this?
Well, it's funny because I did a lot of work on myself, and I did some very interesting body language, body work early on. I had this reconstructive surgery where they had to take bone from the back of my hips. I had 3 different surgeries where they did that. They'd take bone from the back of my hips and could put it into the fusion area. And and every time that happened, there was a lot of pain in the back of the hip. And that ended up being like a pattern. And I got to a point where it's like, I'm so done with this. And I knew because I was taking a yoga class with a person here once a week, and she had me lie on my belly, and she said, I want you to lying on my belly. I want you to raise your leg up, and it was the pain was just in that hip area was just like, oh my god. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And so I went home because it was important for me to kind of try and build those muscles, right? It was just important. So those gluteal muscles are super important to build, and mine were horrible, and so we were trying to build them. And I was like, so I went home and I was like, okay, so this is an interesting situation. What's really happening here? So I laid down again, and instead of raising my leg, I just tensed the muscles that I would tense in order to raise it. And I had the same amount of pain. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I got relaxed again and the pain settled down. And then I was like, now I'm just going to imagine that I'm raising my leg. And the pain hit again. And I was like, okay, there's something going on here that something else is happening here. I don't know what it is, but let's see what this is. And I knew I needed to have a conversation with myself. And of course, Dr. Peter wasn't in my life, but Dr. Prescott was not in my life at that time. This was me all by myself. And this is what I did. I sat down for 20 minutes every day for 40 days. And I said, I had this was just the internal dialogue to that area. I'll never hurt you again. I'll never hurt you again. I'll never hurt you again. And at the end of 40 days, that pain was gone and it hasn't returned.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Elizabeth, that is crazy.
I know. Right. That's the beginning of like, I know, again, this is a theme in this conversation. I know something else is out there that I can't see, that's not being verbalized, right? So I kind of understood that energy from the very beginning. Putting into action was another thing altogether. The other thing that was interesting, I had the science background. So
Really, you did? Where did you go to school?
yeah, I went to school. I have a plant science degree at the University of Delaware, and then I studied as a graduate student at the University of Kansas in systematics and ecology, environmental studies. Really, I learned how to be a research scientist is what I learned. And so what was kind of interesting about all that was I learned the limitations of the model. B, I began to learn about the value of useful questions, kind of what questions are useful and what questions are not. I learned that kind of the hard way, but I was so grateful I learned it. Right? I remember one of my professors saying to me one day, having a conversation, I'm this lowly new student. My husband's the PhD candidate talking to his graduate, his professor, right? Very famous professor. They're having a conversation about something, and I happened to be there, and I said to I asked a question, which was a big thing for me to even say anything, but I asked a question, and the professor turns to me and he says, "This is not an important question," which made me feel about that tall, but that's okay. I got over it. I learned some questions are helpful and some questions are not so helpful, right? So anyway, I understood science, but at this point, just before I went into Dr. Prescott's program, I had been studying the research on the power of prayer. And I hadn't like I hadn't gone a deep dive in it. I hadn't done ran my own experiences, my own experiments, but I had learned that it was a thing and it was being recognized and funding was going towards it. And I was like, this is cool, right? So I had that underpinning, science, and then it's the outside, the other stuff, right? The outside of science, right? And I went into Peter's, Dr. Prescott's, his name was, we called him Dr. Peter. I went into his program, and one of the people that was, John Newton was a wellness practitioner in that program, and he brought in this ancestral clearing, which is a prayer practice. And he just walked in one day and handed everybody like this sheet of paper with a prayer on it. And I'm like, what is this? And who am I? I'm brand new. I don't know anybody. I don't know him from Adam. And I'm detoxing, and I'm just kind of soaking it up. He said, "What's everybody's before we even read did anything with the prayer?" He said, "What everybody's pain level?" We had 20 people in the room, and everybody's pain level from 0 to 10 on a scale was 9 to 20 was what the numbers were reported, and I was sitting at a 9, and so he said, "I want everybody just to read this prayer silently." And so I'm sitting there reading, and I read it, and I got halfway through and I felt the room shift. And I was like, okay, I'm detoxing. That's just, my imagination. And then I got to the end of the prayer, and my pain went from like a 9 to a 2. And I'm like, okay, that was real. Then we finished reading the prayer, and we're not even reading out loud. We're reading it silently. And John says, what's everybody's pain level? And everybody's pain level went from a 9 to 20 to a 2 to a 10, to a 9. So everybody's pain level went way down. And I'm like, I've got my science hat on, and I'm like, what just happened in this room? I know something happened. What is it? Can you measure it? Can he repeat it? And does he teach it? I went into research mode immediately. Right? And I saw him repeat that process time after time for the next however many weeks I was in that program. It was another 4 weeks I was in that program. I was in there 52 days altogether. And I took the first training I could out of the, as soon as I could, which was about 6 months later, I took the first training, and I've been a practitioner of that practice ever since. It's awesome. And it's this ancestral, the prayer, what was it about? It was about offering up the burdens that we carry from our ancestors that no longer serve us, or from our past, even from our past, but including the ancestors. That's what the work was. It's called ancestral clearing. I was just like, this is amazing. And I just love this work so much. So it's this aspect of science hasn't done any work per se on ancestor clearing, but there's lots of kind of studies in science, but it doesn't matter because we live in the all it is, not just in the part that science observes, measures, and describes. So just because we don't believe in gravity doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right?
Is so I mean, for one, I'm like in awe of you because obviously you went to University of Delaware. You went and you're a seeker for one. For two, you're a scientist. You were married, I don't know if you're still married, to the PhD, which is my son's getting his PhD right now. And so you're constantly unveiling things, unveiling things, unveiling things. And so many people, especially when they're in chronic pain, can't get out of that loop. I'm in pain. I'm in pain. I'm in pain. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
pain. I can't get better. I can't get better. You don't understand. My life is this. They play the same tapes over and over, and there's no solution in those, is there?
Well, that's correct. And my husband was also a scientist, and we really were interested in finding the answer. And no, there's no answer was not an answer for us. As I said, we saw the limitation in the model they were working in, and thank God we were trained as research scientists because we were trained to look outside of the paradigm. And when we loved working there, so that's kind of where we hung out. Was like, where's the edge? What are people doing on the edge here? So we had that orientation, and that was what a blessing that was. very supportive. My family was very supportive as I went through this. And um, it was just interesting to be in a place where, and this was important to me now as a kind of a teacher in this space. It was interesting to me to see the limitations that the doctors had. And what I learned was, among other things, a super important lesson. When I'm sitting in front of a healer, and I don't care who it is, it doesn't matter, what is the scope of their practice? What are the things you can ask them about, and what is outside of their practice? Like, you can't ask me as a healing person, a specialist in chronic pain and historical trauma, you can't ask me how to, do heart surgery. I just, let's get out of my scope of practice, right? But as patients, we get in front of healers and we tend to not understand that there's a scope of practice, that, and because we end up asking questions outside of that, and then the doctor or the health person says, I don't know, or maybe their ego gets to them and they say something that's not true, and then you get confused, and nobody's served in that space. So we got to be very careful about, what are we asking? Who are we asking? What questions are we asking the person we're sitting in front of? And are they fair questions? Like, I remember when I hurt my back, when I had that compression fracture, I went to the orthopedic doctor, forgetting my own thing that I just said. And I said, as part of the appointment, one of my questions was, well, what kind of foods can I eat that can help me, help my bone heal faster? And he said, there aren't any. And I know that's not accurate, but it's not in his scope of, they don't learn about that stuff. And he can't comment on that. He should have said, I can't comment on that, but he didn't. He said, there aren't any, which is not actually true. So, like, you see what I'm saying?
Yes. And it takes humility to be able to say, if the doctor had said to you, you know what, I don't know, no comment, that would have been actually a wiser thing for him to have said instead of saying no. I think that the years of putting this doctors up here, like they're above us, are starting to dwindle. And we're realizing, like, especially with alcoholism, like, no doctor, they don't spend any time on alcoholism in medical school, maybe 5 minutes. And it's really tragic, and it's tragic because so many people could have gotten better, including my grandmother. She never could get sober, unfortunately. And I wish that doctors had said, well, I might not be able to help you, but I might point you in a direction of a self-help book, a self-help group that could help you. But I've changed that moving forward, which is amazing, which getting sober myself. And so now here you wrote a book, and what made you write the book? Did you just have this feeling,
Oh,
I've got to do this? What was that journey like, Elizabeth?
that I love that question. I I really, as I said, I've sat with so many patients over the years, and we had a lot of things in common. One of the things you already talked about briefly was, uh, we don't tell the truth. We either complain all the time or we don't say anything at all, and neither of those things are the truth. So, how is a doctor or a nurse or a family member or a friend or caretaker supposed to deal with that? Because they're not actually getting the real stuff from the patient. So how is anybody supposed to help? And I'm not even being truthful myself, right? So I wrote that book to help everybody understand what is happening inside of a chronic pain patient's mind. How does it get changed by chronic pain? Dr. Prescott's book um, talks about kind of the researchery part. He does a great job of laying it out from a sciencey point of view. I bring it in from, like, I bring in the science, but I bring it in, this is how it shows up in a patient. So, and then these are the things that I use to heal my chronic pain issue. And so that's why it's different from other chronic pain books. It actually brings in the voice of a chronic pain suffer, and brings in the tools that I used. I mean, I teach what's helping me. I don't teach anything that people say, well, what about, what about ketamine or something? I'm allergic to ketamine. I can't yet. That's not a therapy for me. That they ask me stuff on, if I don't have experience with it, I don't teach it. I'm not saying that it's bad or good. I'm just saying I don't know anything about it. So it's out of my scope of practice.
Right. And I love the idea that prayer. Like I can envision you sitting there for 40 days saying, this isn't going to hurt me anymore. This isn't going to hurt me anymore.
No,
And
I said, I'm not going to hurt me anymore.
I'm not going to hurt me anymore. I'm not going to hurt me anymore. I
That's what I
love
did.
that, Elizabeth. I love that. Where can my listeners find your book?
Oh, it's on Amazon, or you can get an autographed copy from me on my website. On Amazon, you can get the paperback, a Kindle, or the audio. But,
Awesome.
yeah.
So I'm going to have the link in there for my listeners so they can go directly to your link to your website or to Amazon
Mhm.
and get. And do you do counseling remotely? I mean, from afar?
Sure. Yep. I do coaching. I'm not an actual like certified counselor. Kind of. I don't have the letters, but I am a certified coach. Um, I do it remotely, mostly remote online. Uh, Occasionally, I'll do a private here in Lawrence and where I live, but online. Yep. It's At the ancestor clearing. I do like all over the world every day. It's kind of my bread and butter. But I have a bevy of recovery coaching clients. The thing about recovery that's interesting with chronic pain is we can get sober, but then we've got physical pain and we don't know what to do about it, and that's kind of where I come in.
And that tell us about your ancestral look at me, I couldn't even say it properly. Ancestral trauma, like how do you fix that? Tell us about that your coaching in that because we didn't haven't touched that yet.
Well, that's an interesting practice. We talked about the really working with mothers, and I thought today that I would kind of focus on that if we talked about this. Ancestral clearing is um, a registered and trademarked process that put together by John Newton of Health Beyond Belief. It was pioneered by a man named Howard Wills, and then John kind of made it into this thing, um, and he teaches it as well. Howard doesn't teach it, and Howard does it a little bit differently. Um, and It uses what we're doing is we're calling on creator energy, whatever you call whatever made all of this. We're calling on it to help us release that which no longer serves us. There's a whole bunch of science that kind of supports why the practice works, but I'd rather just take us into an experience of it, and
I
then
love it.
we can talk about why we can talk about it later. Um, so if everybody listening here could just sit quietly and just notice your somatic experience. What are you feeling? Like I can feel my sitting bones on the chair, my feet on the floor. I have a little bit of heart opening. I can feel a little bit of something interesting in my heart area. I would give all those sensations on a scale from 0 to 10. I'd give all of it about a 3. So notice what that is for you, and breathe normally and just let these words pass over you. Divine Creator, all that you are, thank you for the gift of life and connection. We ask humbly that you help us in all our relationships and all of our ancestors and all of their relationships throughout all time, space, timelines, lives, lifetimes, realms, and incarnations. For any time there was a rupture in the relationship between mother and child in the womb, through the birth experience as a newborn or at any other time, and for all that led up to it and arose from it, including unhealthy beliefs or limitations, for poor boundaries, an unrealized sense of self or poor self esteem, please help us all, everyone involved, to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For any time mothers felt fearful or powerless in the face of the experience of conception, gestation, or birth, and any adverse effects this had on both the mother and the child. For all injustice, anger, regret, or letdown around any unhealthy womb or birth experiences, including sexual diseases, miscarriage, or abortion, and for any guilt or shame that followed. For any time anyone felt a sense of shame or that there was something wrong with them, but they didn't know why. Please help us to forgive and release everyone involved and help us forgive and release ourselves. Please and thank you. For any codependence that developed between mothers and children throughout the entire lineage and all that arose from it, including but not limited to caretaking others to the point of resentment and exhaustion, for neediness or feeling we had to have the approval of others in order to act, rather than stand on our own power and act from there. Please help everyone involved, directly or indirectly, to forgive and release one another and forgive and release ourselves. Please and thank you. For any time women felt the weight of obligation to bear children but didn't experience the joy of it, and for all that the children felt because of it. For any time anyone felt the pressure of having to live the unrealized dreams of the mother rather than their own. For any time anyone felt they had to play small in life rather than rise up to their full potential. Please help everyone to forgive and release each other and forgive and release themselves. Please and thank you. Divine Creator, please help all the mothers forgive all the children. Help all the children forgive all the mothers. Help the fathers forgive all the children, and all the children forgive all the fathers. Help all the women forgive all the men, and all the men forgive all the women. Please help them all forgive each other throughout the entire lineage for all that happened and didn't happen, and for all anyone made it mean, and for all the letdown because of it. For all of it, for once and for all, now and forever, please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Take a nice big breath in, let it out, and notice how that feels.
Clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Where can we find that? And how often will we do that to feel this all the time? Because
I know. I know. I was like, what is this? Right? So, what you just experienced, what we're all experiencing there is we came in with this weight. We don't even know we have it until we don't have it anymore. And we experience that lightness because we just released a bunch of it. And the other thing that's cool about this that I learned kind of from deep listening, we don't even have to believe in a higher power for this thing to work. All we need is like actual willingness from the heart. Please help me. And we get the help. So this is really hard work.
it's amazing. Because I think, especially in these days, there's a lot of estrangement in the world today in families, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had specialists on, I've had people on that are going through it.
Mm-hmm.
I myself personally have been going through it, and
Mm-hmm.
it is so painful.
Yeah.
It is so painful. And so many people are hurting these days ever since COVID and, feeling alone and
Mm-hmm.
feeling isolated. And it's been,
Mm-hmm.
and political, and people, I'm not, you're this and I'm that. And, when we were growing up, everybody liked anybody. It didn't matter what you were voting for.
Yeah.
This darkness, it's everywhere. What
Well,
you're doing is beautiful.
yeah, thank you. So you've heard this before, but I don't know if the audience has heard it. We hear it in the rooms, right? Of Alcoholics Anonymous and other rooms. We hear if it's hysterical, it's historical. So isn't that interesting that now, like, that's kind of the only place I ever heard that was in the rooms. But in the context of ancestral clearing and in the context of what you just said, the collective fear that we're all kind of experiencing, where the heck did that come from? It just didn't come out of thin air. It's got a root in the lineage. And if we don't clear the root, then how are we supposed to deal with this? So that's why when I have a new client, I start with ancestral clearing. It's the first thing that I do. We got to have a clear lens in order to see our way forward, and we get our lens, we come into this world with clouded lenses over our eyes because of the burden that we carry.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
The other thing that's interesting, Bizzy, is that you said, oh, I've got this issue in my family, with a certain family member or whatever. Ancestral clearing, I like literally no one has come so far. I'm not saying it will never happen, but just so far in all these years that I've been doing this work, no one's come with an issue that we haven't been able to address with this practice. And what happens when I get somebody that comes to me like, oh, I'm having trouble with so and so, we have ways that we can get to that. It's not about them, it's about you and how it's showing up in you. And then we help you clear the burden around that. And all of a sudden, the relationship shifts. It's the darndest thing. But that's how it works.
Okay, I have to sign up for an appointment. You
Oh,
guys
I love
can
that.
sign me up for an appointment. Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love that because it is just, it's time to let go of this stuff that through generations and generations. And I hear so much
Mhm.
these days that we all want to change the generational, right? And I don't think any of our parents were bad or anything. It was just during the times that they were raised, right? It was just
Sure.
different. And now we have the tools and people like you, Elizabeth, that can help us, which they didn't have back then.
No, oh my goodness, my parents got by on their wits. It's astonishing. Like, you know, it's I mean, the amount of compassion that I have for them and what they went through, and compared to, like, the tools that we have to, it's just like, anyway, my mom, who tried her best, but she just was kind of pulled and pushed from, the tides of what was going on, and her kind of DNA. That I had a DNA test done, kind of a workup that they could do, maybe 10 years ago. And the doctor, when he got and I knew a little bit about my mother's medical history. The doctor was giving me the report. He gets 30 seconds into the report about my genes. And I stopped him and I said, oh my God, my mother never had a shot coming out of the womb. It was like that. That's how much our parents had to deal with. So, they did an amazing job raising us. Amazing.
They really did.
Yeah.
They really did. They didn't have any of these answers. And today, by the grace of God, we have answers today and we can reach out for help and we can get somebody to say, yes, I hear you. And let's do this and help you in action. Instead of constantly going, this is the problem, we have a solution.
That's
Do
right.
this. And we have more tools that we can teach you. And I'm not talking about tools like a hammer and wrench. I mean, these are real tools that we can use to help us grow as human beings and just have a better life, a calmer life, a more peaceful life.
Yeah, when we have a calmer and peaceful life, then we can actually see the solution to the current. We can meet the need of the moment. Like, we kind of my latest thing with all that's been going on in the world has been, my latest kind of mantra has been, think cosmically, act locally.
Yeah.
Right? So we keep our connection to the all that is, that power, and then now how can we use that to meet the moment
Hmm.
that I'm facing right now, right? That's the kind of stuff that's keeping me centered, because there's a lot of chaos out there.
Yeah. More is being revealed every day. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the connection that we have with the all that is remains the same,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So
You keep it open. And
yeah,
when you're
that's
sober, you can keep it open, which
yeah,
is the best part, right?
exactly.
When you're on all these medications, I know some of them some people really need desperately, but some
Mhm.
of them, that you don't maybe find an alternative like Elizabeth did and went and take that next step and I mean, not everybody's a researcher and you're so blessed that you were and you are one.
Mhm. Yeah, I was fortunate. Lots of people are fortunate. I will say that I don't. I'm really kind of sit in wonder in the recovery circles, um, because So I mean, like so many people don't make it into them, right? And so it's a very sacred seat that we hold in the circle, recovery circle, and so that's kind of, you know, maybe you're not able to align, maybe you're early in recovery, or maybe you're just super busy in the rest of your life and you feel like you can't contribute to the recovery community. You know what, if you can just hold your seat in the circle, that's service to all of us.
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, when I got sober, you could still, one of your jobs could have been cleaning the ashtrays, you know?
Right.
I mean, it was a big job. I mean, somebody had to do it. Can you imagine if they didn't? You'd have cigarette ashes all over the butts everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, making the coffee. I mean, all of these little things that we can do, and just saying hello is service to another human being and being vulnerable enough to say that. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth, this has been so incredible, you guys. If you want to reach out to Elizabeth again, all the information is going to be in the description. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much, Bizzy. This has been great, and all the best to you for the rest of the day and the rest of your life.
You too, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. You guys, you know what to do, and subscribe to my show. Go to my website. You'll find all the information. And until next time, you guys, just know this. You are not alone. Remember that. Take care. Thanks for listening to Conversations with Bizzy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me. And follow me on all social media. And you can also get my newsletter every Friday morning into your inbox. Just go to elizabethchance.com and subscribe. Take care.